It being 7:01, I want to call the public hearing to order for the Mashpee school start time. I need a motion.
So moved.
A second.
And a second motion by George and a second by Nicole to enter into the public hearing. So as Nicole mentioned, the committee,
Vote.
oh, I'm sorry,
Vote.
and a vote. Nicole?
Yes.
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 Yes, sorry, I was trying to get ahead of myself here. As Nicole mentioned, the purpose of this hearing is for you to be able to provide feedback to the committee. So therefore, the responses from the committee will be very limited, if at all. But that is not an indication that we're not hearing you. This truly is about you expressing your opinion. The committee will subsequently be having a discussion at the next committee meeting on April 25th in regard to the school start times. So at that point, we will be taking into account and discussing publicly your feedback that you're providing to us tonight. So with that, any questions by the committee? All
I
right.
just want to make a quick comment as well. I just want
Yes.
to echo Nicole a little bit too. I will say that, you know, obviously, the administration's probably your best avenue only because they do this full time. This is their job. If you want an immediate answer, well, as quickly as possible. I don't want to put you on the spot saying immediately, but quicker, most likely quicker. They probably will be your best avenue, but again, like Nicole said, reach out to Nicole, reach out to myself. You know, we both have Facebook pages, we both have emails, the entire committee has an email. Please feel free to do that. Don't feel like you can't ask us anything, you know, that's on your mind, especially when it comes to this. We want to hear about it. It's the only way we're going to know what's going on. It's difficult when we have these meetings monthly and, you know, we don't get as much feedback. So this is great, but please feel free to give us as much as you can.
All right, given the number of individuals who've signed up, I would ask that you limit your comments to 3 to 4 minutes so that everyone has an opportunity to be heard. With that, I'll start with the first person on the list, John Cotton.
Thank you, school committee. Thank you, superintendent, assistant superintendent, business manager, and just actually have a couple quick questions. I understand you can't have a dialogue. I'm John Cotton, 30 Knobsco Road, longtime resident, Mashpee, love Mashpee. But that being said, my two questions are: what additional costs would be incurred by this delayed school start? And I understand I don't want the answers now, but that's my question. The other question I want answered is, what do we intend to gain by doing so? And you notice how I mentioned, what do we intend to gain? I'm concerned that with doing so, are we just, and this is what I've heard just by small talk around town, by kids saying, oh, we can just stay up later now, and we don't have to worry about getting to school early. So I don't know if that's the win where kids are going to be better rested, because that's one of the reasons why I heard this last year. That's my concern. If it's kids not going to bed at a reasonable time, that's not a concern of the schools, in my opinion. That's something that parents need to address. So I don't know what we're going to gain by doing so. So those are my two quick questions. So thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Bethany Traverse.
Hello. So again, my name is Bethany Traverse. I live at 18 Windsor Way in Mashpee, and this is my first meeting related to the schools of any kind. I am a preschool mom. My daughter Sadie's in Mrs. York's class, and I have a 19-month-old son, so I'm just starting this whole journey. I'm a little concerned about the proposed start times, especially for the earlier time for the smaller children. I don't know everybody else's situation, but in our family, my husband and I both work. My husband works full-time and I work part-time. And we have a little bit of a later schedule. We both get home late, which means we have dinner late, and the kids go to bed late, or later than other children might. I'm not sure. They go to bed at about 8:30. And even right now, getting Sadie up to be at school at 8:20 is a challenge. We have to wake her up. Normally, she wakes up at about 8 o'clock on her own, so we have to get her up at 7. And with the new proposed start times, we'd have to get her up at roughly 6:30 at the latest, probably. And so I've been doing a little bit of research. I know that the committee did some studies regarding adolescent sleep, but what I learned from looking at American Academy of Pediatrics and also the National Sleep Association is that the smaller children also have very large sleep requirements, 10 to 12 hours. And so it's important for me that my children get enough sleep, because everybody knows that preschool kids and elementary school age kids, if they don't get enough sleep, there's going to be cognitive issues and behavioral issues, tantrums, meltdowns. And so that's why I'm here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Cathy Lewis.
Hi, I'm Cathy Lewis, 44 Juniper Drive. I grew up in Mashpee, went through the school system. Now my daughter is in 3rd grade, doing the same. I have some pretty serious concerns about these proposed start times, especially regarding the elementary schools. Like Bethany, I also did some research, brought it with me. The current time is tough enough, it really is. And I know part of that is a parenting issue. However, moving the school start time then makes it even more difficult and challenging to get a child up, because you figure if the earliest bus time, right now my daughter's bus time is 7:25, we don't make it. It never, 7:25, 7:30, depends on if the bus is early. We don't make it. It just doesn't happen. So I drive her every day, which is fine, gives us a little bit of time to bond, be together, have family time. However, if this proposed school start time does happen, we're looking at, a 6:45 bus stop, which means an hour prior to that to get up, get dressed, get breakfast, any family time. You're looking 5:30 in the morning. Then they need 10 to 12 hours to sleep. She's going to have more time at after school, which already is not the best option in my opinion, but it's a necessity for a 2-family, full-time parent working family. And the cost, last year I did email Mrs. DeBoer and was told that the reason the proposal shifted to the earlier was because of an excessive high demand for before-school childcare that would result with later start time for the elementary schools, the cost of which could not be absorbed by the district's budget. There was significant feedback from families who felt the younger students who tend to be up early would be okay with starting their school days earlier, and nothing had been decided at that point. So I kind of let it rest to see how the studies and how the conversation was going to play out. I guess part of that was I don't see it as your problem to pay for my child care. So I guess I was a little confused by that answer in terms of the before-school care being absorbed by the school system, because the after-school care is not really absorbed by the school system, at least what I use. I'm not sure if there is programs or are programs that are provided by the school system other than the after-school clubs, which go for roughly, an hour after school, I think. So that was kind of one thing I was like, that's a little not what I was expecting to hear. And then, again, going back to being up early, my kid's one of those kids that's not up early. So my concern was loss of family time, because if you've got 2 parents that are working till 5, picking up the kid from whatever childcare they're at, they come home, they've got to be in bed by 7:30 at the latest to get the optimum amount of sleep. You've got to feed them homework, you know, it's kind of like, it takes away from what I consider to be very valuable family time that is limited anyways. And then don't even get me started on after-school stuff, because then you totally eliminated any type of dance classes or any of those types of activities that, you know, or karate, things that go later into the evening sometimes. So those are my concerns. And thank you for letting us voice our opinions and thoughts on this. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we at least clarify for everybody's benefit who maybe wasn't here last year, that the proposal that was on the table last year was to provide free before care? So that's why I think that might have been included in that response, is because that was kind of part of the proposal, was to cover any childcare costs associated with the change.
Right.
And, yeah.
Samantha Zeal?
Hi, Samantha Zeal, and yes, I was here last year, and yes, I still have 3 children in your school system. Yep, one being a kindergartner, 3rd grader, and a freshman. And as we sat here last year, ironically, I watched the school committee meeting today during my planning, because yes, I'm a teacher. And one of our things that was stated last year was that this was tabled for further discussion. One of you did say that this was going to be tabled indefinitely. However, you wanted to focus on the impact on the students, and 217 was to gather information. We did have a survey. My first question is, where's the results of the survey? I think that we should have that information as parents so we can be informed and we can have an opinion about what the community feels about this. So I'm a little disappointed that that information isn't given to us right now, because it should be, because we have the right to that information. Another thing I'm a little upset with is that the fact that since this is a connected community and communication is something that we strive on, I don't think it was really fair to have a 4 o'clock email last night to tell us about this hearing. That's just very frustrating, because there are obviously a lot of people here that have opinions, and I think as a connected community, this conversation should have been happening all along, especially since there was articles that were sent out in January saying that here's the new times that we're starting to talk about. So I find it to be frustrating. And if you review last year's school committee meeting, the concerns are the same as the high school parents having a later start time and having a child that plays 2 sports. And we are in a league where we play Hull and Norwell. Like, for example, baseball, they're traveling next week across the bridge. That's now 1 lane. So if we venture that next year with late start times, these children first of all, they're going to miss 90 minutes out of school so they can travel to these locations off Cape. And if it's during the springtime, we have travel concerns. So now these kids aren't getting home until 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, which they still have their homework to do. So even having a school start time at 8:30, I don't see the benefit in 1 hour. So that really troubles me, because kids are still missing time on task. Kids are still missing time from learning. When we shift that hour, you're just shifting everything to an hour. And to echo what Mr. Cotton said, yeah, that through the kid's perspective, oh wow, I get to go to school later, I have an extra hour. That's how they see it. Just have the conversation with my child. I think we should survey the kids, since it is their education, to see what their input is. In regards to the younger kids, on the flip side, being the mom of 3, right now, the bus is 7:30 to get to an 8:30 school start. 7:30 school start, my children will have to get on the bus at 6:30. It's still dark at 6:30. I don't know how we expect elementary students to be on a bus that early to go to school. In addition, on the flip side, then they'll get out at 2. And that is additional childcare for many of us, and many of us rely on that older child to provide that daycare. So I just think that we really need to really analyze this and get the information so we can have an informed decision and look at both sides of it. Because what is 50% of our children in Mashpee are in the elementary schools. What benefit is this doing to them? They are our future. High school kids, they need to get prepared for the real world. They're not going to turn around and say, oh, I got up at 8, I could go to school at 8:30, I can't make it to a 7 o'clock work time. It's just very frustrating because we're trying to teach our older kids how to become responsible and how to time management, but yet we're stepping back and saying, oh, here, you need some more sleep. Let us parents handle the sleep at our homes. So yeah, I'm very upset with this. I'm very frustrated. Frustrated with the lack of communication, and I'm frustrated with the lack of information. So I hope moving forward that you can answer all of our questions, and let's see the data. What are the pros for the younger kids to go at a younger time? And again, as I said a year ago, if we're really concerned about our children, let's look at our school day. What can we do within our school day in order to maximize their learning? And you know I'm a PE teacher, I'm a PE advocate. I say get them moving and look at the nutrition, look at the breakfasts. That all has relevant studies shown to improve educational performance and to improve behavior problems and to improve attendance. Look at what you guys can do during the school day to improve our children, and let us handle what we can do at home to get our kids to school.
All right,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Boyd?
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Michelle Bird. To be honest, when I was signing this sheet, I thought it was for attendance.
Oh.
I'm not prepared. But I do have, I have twin boys that are at KCC. They've been there, this is their second year. They're in kindergarten. And as it is right now, it's so difficult to be ready. I drive them to school every day, pick them up every day. Love the teachers. I'm so pleased with our school system, but an earlier start time would just be so difficult. I literally have to, it's just hard as it is right now, and we leave the house at 8. I can't imagine leaving at 7. It just, 7:15, it just wouldn't work for us. So thank you for listening. And also, my only question, I did email Patty yesterday, but it was just about the survey. I know that there's a paper survey and the electronic. I know it takes a while to get all that in together. I understand that. But it would be nice to know what the parents thought. So thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Should I say?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So I can assure you that up until about an hour ago, I was up to my neck in survey data. So there really isn't a holdup. I think what we probably should have done was let you know that we sent out 517 surveys to the people who didn't respond to the electronic survey, because I wanted to make sure we gave everybody a chance to participate. So we got 2 more surveys in today. So I included those because I felt like the public meeting, the hearing was tonight, and so I wanted to make sure that it all got looped in. So if you stick around, we have, later on the agenda, we're going to be dealing with the special questions. I did not have time to process all 40 questions for the meeting tonight, but I'll be working on it. So if you want to stick around, you can see that, and then we can make the PDF of those charts available on the website after the meeting too, so you can see it. Okay. Thanks.
Stacey?
Hi, good evening. My name's Stacey Mayer. I have a son in 6th and a son in kindergarten. I agree with Michelle. I thought we were signing a attendance sheet, but I do. It's what I get for reading. I do want to just commend the school committee. I think you guys do a fantastic job. I know it's not an easy task. As far as school start times, I know you're going to decide what's best for our children and what's best for their well-being and their education. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Burns?
Hello, good evening. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak. I have a kindergarten student and I have a 5th grade student, so there's quite an age gap between my 2 children. I also teach 6th grade in a neighboring district. In the district where I work, we have gone through this over and over again, time change, and we have tabled it because you cannot equally accommodate every family, every child. What I think is happening before us is a Band-Aid approach to fixing the high school, but we're costing our younger children. As a 6th grade teacher, my students come into school to start at 7:50 and they're still exhausted. I can't imagine having them come in at 7 o'clock to start their day. My older son is being pulled out of bed every morning at 6:30 to get here. He knows that's what he's going to have to do and go to the high school to do that. We talk about career readiness, college readiness. When I went to college, I had to take 8 o'clock classes because that's what you do when you're a freshman. Maybe I picked the wrong profession, but I'm up at 5:30 every morning, and my husband's out the door at 5:30 every day. He's an electrician. I think a lot of people in this town are hardworking families, but they're also laborers, they're teachers. They have jobs that are not 9 to 5. Most of our children might not have jobs that are 9 to 5. So to prepare them and just let them sleep in the morning is not giving them a chance to face real life. I think we're coddling them, and I think we need to teach them that real life is you go to bed, you're responsible. Parenting could be an issue. I don't have phones for my children in my home. I don't plan on it. TV's off at 7 o'clock at night. They're in bed at 7:30, 8 o'clock. I just think that there's things we can fix and we can't fix, and we have to look at the general population. A 5-year-old at a bus stop at 6:45 in the morning sounds like the most ridiculous thing to me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Nadia?
Hi, I'm Nadia Carboni. I have a son who is in 1st grade. I have another son who is going to be in junior kindergarten next year, and then another future Falcon. My concern with the early start time really is I'm having a really hard time wrapping my brain around how we're prioritizing, our high school kids up against our elementary school kids. Who gets to sleep more? And I just don't think that we have the answer for that, and I just don't think that there's enough information for us to move forward with any kind of proposal at this point. I can't imagine my 7-year-old standing outside at 6:30 in the morning when it's dark in the middle of winter to get picked up by the bus. I'm lucky that, we're flexible, that, I can make it work, but that's just ridiculous. I mean, seeing these little kids, a kindergartner standing outside at 6:30 in the morning, it's not going to work for our family. I just don't support it. I also would like to second the results for the survey. I'd love to hear what everyone else has to say. And I also want to echo the fact that the communication is just lacking. Perhaps I've been living under a rock, but I pride myself on staying on top of my children's matters with school. And I just don't think it was very transparent. I think that we're kind of like on this need-to-know basis, and I would have liked to have everything really bluntly laid out what it was that we're doing and talking about. Maybe I'm just a new parent to the school system, but I think I would have appreciated a little more information about what it was that we were talking about and doing here. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah?
Hey there, I'm Sarah Finnell, Mashpee resident, of course. I have a kindergartner and also a preschooler. I would probably just echo what some of the other folks are saying about how it is to get the young kids out of the house in the morning. I actually have 2 naturally early risers. They're usually up between 6 and 6:15, and they spend 20 to 30 minutes of sort of unstructured playtime, which I'm sure that we could all agree our kids do not get enough of. It's a really good way to start their day. But beyond that, 20 minutes goes really fast of reading a book or whatever. And then between breakfast, getting dressed, and my husband actually takes my daughter to school, leaving at 8 o'clock, it's pretty packed from then on. So there's not really a whole lot of time to spare. So to have any sort of similar routine with an earlier start time, I would be setting an alarm for 5 o'clock for my daughter, and that just seems so ludicrous to me. Waking up a 7-year-old at 5 o'clock so they could have a few minutes to do something other than, cruise out the door. And that is my kid that follows my directions better. I have a slowpoke coming down the road here, my 4-year-old, so I can just imagine my home turning into a boot camp in the morning just to get to school on time. And I don't like the way that looks. I don't have high schoolers, so I can't speak to that, but I do have nieces and nephews, and I will say, natural consequences have a lot more, they have to take a lot more control of that in their home, and I definitely support that approach. They have a lot more control of their time, whereas I'm on top of my 5 and 6-year-old to get things done in the time that they need to get it done. So someone mentioned, what do we stand to gain? So I feel like in my house it would be taking an hour of sleep from my children and giving it to a high school kid who could possibly manage that time a little bit better on their own compared to my small children. And then, as a couple other folks have mentioned, I think family time would definitely suffer. My husband has a pretty normal schedule. He drops my daughter off and goes to work and comes home around 6 o'clock. My kids already go to bed at 7 o'clock, so I don't think that I could put them to bed a minute earlier without them thinking that's pretty weird, going to bed at 6:45. So he comes home, we have dinner together. That's very important to us, and then it's bedtime. So by losing an hour in the morning, I think we would either have to sacrifice really rushing and pressure to hurry, or a half of his family time that he gets to spend with his kids, and I think that's really, really important to me. It's hard to imagine sacrificing either of those things, to give a high schooler who may just stay up an hour later and not get the extra sleep that we're all hoping that they get. So, I think the question of what do we stand to gain as an entire community is a really, really important one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon?
Good evening, Sharon DiFrancesco. I hadn't planned on speaking tonight. I was going to come and be a fly on the wall was the big plan, and not knowing what the format was going to be and not truly having time to prepare anything anyway. Truth of the matter is, though, I could speak for 2 hours about the reasons I think we should move the bell times. The science is overwhelming, and you've heard me say that more than once. This is about the kids. I don't think we can afford to take our eyes off that. This is about the kids. Now, somebody made the great point, are we pitting the well-being of the elementary school children against the well-being of the middle and high schoolers? Well, if you're going to have 2 different bus runs, yes, we are. If we don't want to have everybody starting school at the same time, we need those 2 different bus runs. This is what we're looking at. Who can better handle the earlier time? I'm not going to argue that point right now, but I will say that there does seem to be maybe a dearth of understanding about all the reasons that the teens need the sleep. I hear they will squander the time they're given. But research after research, study after study, I could bore you to tears with the improvements in attendance, both absenteeism and tardiness, improvement in grade scores, depression incidences drop, car accidents frequency drops, suicide ideation drops. There's so much to be gained by giving those teens that extra hour. And also, what I haven't heard tonight was talk about the shift in circadian rhythms that does happen when kids, and it shifts. It can happen between 10 and 13 maybe, and can last all the way to 26. Now, we always hear, I'm getting my kid ready for school. They need to know if they have to be at work for 7, then they have to get up for 7. This is a window that we get one shot at, these teen years. And I'm not trying to dismiss the need of a good childhood, too, in the preschool and the elementary school years. But the shift for the teens happens. They can't get to sleep. until a later hour, and I know I'm preaching to the choir on a lot of this, but they can't get to sleep until later. They need their, average 9 hours of sleep. They're not getting it. And it's like waking adults at 4 a.m. every day for years. Do you think about that? If somebody woke you up at 4 a.m. every day after you went to bed at maybe 10, which you probably can. Teenagers can't generally get to sleep by 10. I'm fortunate. Mine are eking toward 10, unfortunately, but they haven't gotten there yet. I expect to see them after 10, maybe inside a year, if what I've read is true. So the teens are walking around sleep deprived. That is just a fact. It's chronic and it's dangerous. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not going to sit here and say the answer is make kids stand at a bus at 6 a.m. Make kids under 10 stand at a bus at wait for a bus at 6 a.m. But we really do, you have a full plate. I don't know how else to say it. I've probably gone over time, but there was one more thing I wanted to say, and I'm waiting for it to jump out at me, which was, no, it's gone.
All right.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. This is a critical conversation. It's right up there with, child seatbelts and child labor laws and cigarette smoking. This is no small thing. And it's interesting that most of the people tonight here at this microphone, most, not all, but most, were parents of elementary school kids who will become, they're going to be teenagers, and you're going to be in my chair, and you're going to be saying, oh my gosh, my kids are a mess. I feel like the worst Mom of the Year award every morning when I have to drag my kids from dead sleep, from a sleep that they desperately need for learning, for performance, for mental health. And I have to do it every morning. And I mean, it's one of the reasons I toy with homeschooling, sadly. I love the teachers at Mashpee. I do. I've been here since preschool, and I'm in the middle school, and I'm happy with the teacher, and I wish my kids were performing at their best at a time when they need to be at their best. So when I am ready, unfortunately at 18, to send them out, that they had every opportunity. They're not getting it right now. Thank you.
All right, thank
Thanks,
you.
Ron.
Did anyone else come in after we did the sign-up sheet that wants to talk? If you would come up to the microphone and introduce yourself.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
My name's LaToya Green. I'm a lifelong Mashpee resident. I have 2 children that attend Mashpee Public Schools. They're in 1st and 2nd grade right now. We own a home here, so I do anticipate that they'll attend high school here, unless they attend tech or somewhere else, but hopefully they're here all the way through 12th grade. So I was here last year when you were toying with the idea of making the start time later. I was against that idea. It wouldn't work for my family because of work issues mostly, and getting them on the bus. And then found out it wouldn't work for the district because of budget constraints, so it was a win-win. This year they want us to move it earlier for the younger kids and still push it later for the older kids. And I've come back this year for a few different reasons. Online discussion, I'm sure everyone saw today, got heated. If you guys wanted to analyze anything, you could look at the comments and get a quick review of what Mashpee thought. There was a friend that couldn't make it that asked me to share her concerns. I don't know if anyone was able to. Did you? Could you talk? So she's an HR director over at Cape Cod Healthcare, and she said that she has hired kids right out of high school for several positions over, and that not any position at any of her hospitals starts at 8 o'clock or 8:30 a.m., and that any child or individual wanting an employment should be ready and prepared to start work at that time out of high school. They come for summer jobs, they come for internships, and they come for full-time employment. So that was her message. My message comes from a little bit of a different standpoint. One, I do think kids should be prepared right out of high school to go to work. In the small towns that we live in on Cape Cod, that's life. It's what I grew up in, the family I grew up in, the life I moved into. Even in college, we go to school and you get up early, you make it work. People have become doctors, lawyers, presidents, getting up and attending school at that time. They say that you get more sleep and you get a better education, you learn more. And I was pushed to question if that's the only way that you get a better education and you learn more. If sleep is controlled by your educational system and not at home, then what else? What else grays that boundary line? I mean, because sleep is controlled at home. You know, kids are gonna either manipulate that line or not. You can give them a 9:30 start time, and it doesn't matter if their parents aren't enforcing that. So sleep has to happen at home. And then you get to school, 7:30, 8:30, 9:30, and someone else in the audience did it. What are we doing at school that can maximize their education? Are we an innovation school? Are we doing everything that we can during those 6 or 8 hours? If we extend the elementary school times and they're in school for 12 hours a day, are those young kids going to be able to excel? By the end of those 6 years in 12 hours a day in elementary school, that shorter, lessened 9:30 start time of a high school, is that going to make a difference? Are they going to even like school by 9th grade? And then it also moved me to think, this is the second time I've been here to speak on this discussion. How many times have you guys been to this table to speak on this issue? Which, now that we've got a whole town riled up about, we know that we have so many different opinions, we clearly don't have the right answer for that works for everyone. So we obviously don't have anything we can settle on yet. What else could we work on right now that we can improve our kids? What can we do right now? Can we become an innovation school? Could we focus on more programs for them? Can you guys focus on drugs? Can you focus on teen pregnancy? Is our dropout rate growing? Do we need to do more things to bring them in? What can we do to help the kids right now? Because this discussion, even though we keep bringing it back to the table, isn't coming up with a solution that makes everyone happy. So we need to focus on things that we can do for the kids, that work for the kids right now. Because what we're doing is losing kids every year, while in 2 years, we've argued about one thing that hasn't helped any kids. So thank you for my time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? All right, the superintendent has a couple emails that she had received that will be read.
So some of the parents who asked that this be shared, so Katie Diaz just wanted the committee to know that she's against changing the start times. Kristen Mitchell Hughes would like me to read, as the mother of a 5-year-old boy currently enrolled in the Mashpee Public Schools, I believe changing the school start times would take a huge toll on working families like mine. The earlier start time would mean that I and a majority of other working parents would now need to pay for our children to be in an after-school programming for an hour longer every day. For many, this would create a financial hardship. This would also lead to excessively early pickup times for these younger children. My child's bus currently picks him up at 7:30 a.m. If the earlier start time is passed, he would need to be at the bus stop at 6:45 a.m. My first concern with this is that it will compromise the sleep that these young children need to thrive in the classroom. These kids need quality sleep just as much as the older kids. And the bottom line is that young brains that aren't getting enough sleep simply don't learn well. And on a somewhat selfish note, the earlier start time will ultimately take away what little precious time in the morning my husband and I get to spend with our son before we leave for work. As a working mom, I consider every single minute of time additional time with my child to be extremely valuable. And she would like this to be read. I have one more that came in I just wanted to read. This is from Jamie Vincent. As a parent of a first and fourth grader who attend Mashpee Public Schools and I want to share with you my opinion on the most recent proposal for school start times. While I understand research is clear that later start times for high school students is critical to learning and development, the research is not clear about whether earlier start times would be beneficial or detrimental to primary or elementary students. While I think a later start for middle high school students is imperative, without further studies regarding the effects on primary elementary students and earlier start times, I feel one way to resolve this issue would be to push all current school schedules ahead or begin the high school start time after the current elementary start times. I understand the need to address a later start time for high school students, but feel this proposed schedule does so at a detriment to our younger students. Thank you for allowing me to share my opinion. And technically, we had one more. Do you want me to read one more?
Which one's that one from?
Dominique Fougere.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, and then this one, which was at 7:12, from Dominique Fougere. As a mother of 4 children in Mashpee, I appreciate your research and best practice for educating our children. However, I strongly believe the current interest in changing school start times will not be beneficial for the majority of our community. Countless conversations with friends and family in town have working parents worrying about how to balance work and funding before and or after care for elementary age children. As a high school educator in a neighboring district, my students were polled and personally stated that a later start time would result in a later bedtime. Thus, the intention of gaining more sleep for the adolescent brain becomes void. Have our Mashpee students been surveyed? The switch in start times is not accommodating for most families with both working parents and especially those with young children. As of now, I am out of the house before 6:30 a.m. and my husband puts our children on the bus. It is already difficult to get a first and third grader up, dressed, fed, and ready for their 7:30 bus. If the start times change, they would need to be up at 5:30 to be ready to stand in the dark at 6:30. I guess I would need to wake up at 4:30. As a teacher, I am fortunate to have the ability to make it home to get my girls off the bus on most days. Changing the time would require many children, including my own, to go to aftercare every day. This would result in a much longer and unnecessary school day for many children. If anything, at their age, they need less structured school time and more time for creative and free play. Additionally, aftercare would cause a financial burden on working families like my own. In a few short years, my oldest daughter will be able to watch her 3 younger siblings after school. Many families rely upon this child care to alleviate financial burdens. If the start times of Mashpee Middle High School and the elementary school switch, this is no longer a benefit to many families. Okay, I've got 2 more paragraphs here. While I believe there is merit in adolescent students gaining more sleep, I am not sure if a later start time is the solution. Many college courses and jobs begin at 8. The ability to sleep late is not always a reality. I am not devaluing sleep. However, high schools should prepare students by modeling accountability and responsibility. I am sure if our culture and adolescents spent less time overstimulating their brain with technological devices, they may be better prepared to learn. But that is another issue. What seems like a solution for one age group becomes a burden for another age group, with added stress to several local parents and families. Some of the reasons my husband and I moved to Mashpee from Sandwich were the enriching educational opportunities, full-day preschool, and free extracurricular clubs. As a teacher and mother, I have the best interests of my children and all students and expect the Mashpee School District to have the same. That's it.
All right, has everyone had an opportunity to be heard?
Move to close the public hearing then?
A motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a